this portion of the panel on what the Marxist analysis that will lead to, more importantly, Marxist practice in the area of immigration. What many of us see in the struggle for immigration, broad rights of migrant workers, freedom, liberation of our class, is that the contradiction now has shifted somewhat. And any errors in this formulation are ours and not necessarily yours, of course. But we see the contradiction between global capital and oppressed peoples, countries, nations, and working class internationally, and the task of the oppressed peoples, countries, nations, and working class to advance and liberate those peoples, countries, nations, and class. As Marxist, as a young Marxist, I should say as a young trade unionist, we took over power in the Democratic Workers' Movement. We seized the local union, which we thought that's a good thing, right? We were struggling against Boston bureaucrat, so we took over, right? We took that local and put it in our strong hands. And the first question that we asked ourselves, having seized the union hall, excuse the language, what the fuck are we going to do now? You know, I said, well, geez, we know what we didn't want, right? But we didn't have a sense of what we wanted, and more importantly, how we're going to do it. Right? So as a young trade unionist, I was drawn toward Marxist education and, more important, Marxist practice. And what is that Marxist education, Marxist practice? How do you define it? How do you know what it is? It's very simple. It's struggle, unrelenting, unrelentless, uncompromising struggle on behalf of those who are oppressed, working with and through their leadership. Moving quickly now to the practice. First of all, I'd like to preface by saying the reason I'm here, not only because I wanted to be with you, but because I see this organization in the same streets where I am, right? Struggling, fighting for immigrants, for low-wage workers. The other quick preface is this was not a theoretical endeavor on immigration. One of the many times we were traveling to our home country, our home country and our home Pueblo. We were driving through Highway 15. I don't know if any of you have done that. Right in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. In the middle, hottest part of the day. We're driving along in the 53 Meadowbrook. Right? And here he is, a bunch of my dad and all the kids, and shit falling out the car and all, you know, the trunk and all that. And what do we see? There's a woman walking back. A woman walking back, a mother walking back with 3 children going south while we were going north. And of course my father stopped and offered, I said, what are you going to do? What's going on? Do you need a ride? This is the story of our lives. She was walking back home because she couldn't cross the border. She was walking back home alone, didn't have the fare for a bus. She was walking back 1,500 miles, caring for her children to return to her wife. That is what this immigration issue is about. Broken families. So that is the basis of the understanding, not some theoretical construct, but seeing these contradictions in daily life. What is the context in which we struggle today? Increasingly, this system is unmasked. They are a bunch of scoundrels and thieves. Right? They have taken everything except our debt. That's the one thing they haven't taken from us. Right? When they figure that one out, perhaps we'll be a little less nervous. Considering the issue of immigration, it is one of the richest examples of the political economy upon which this thieving capitalist nation thrives. It's a political economy which is based on a pillar of racism, national oppression, and class exploitation. The amount of profits and super profits that goes into the hands of the financiers and the capitalist class is beyond comprehension, beyond numbers. And that is why the struggle for broad, fair, and correct immigration reform is so difficult, because that's what's at stake, and nobody gives up that kind of power and that kind of money, right, to anybody without the kind of struggle we must envision and embark on. What is the approach that we have for those of us that involve all our lives on this issue? We started before, and we must remain on the broad right. Derechos plenos for migrant workers. Broad rights. Not partial rights. Not a right only tied to your employer. It must be broad rights, where all workers, right, have the same rights to struggle, to improve our lives, and to build our leadership and organization. I've been also asked to comment quickly on the issue of labor's involvement. First of all, let me acknowledge that labor's involvement preceded our current generation. The miners' strikes, the copper miners, the international solidarity between the CP, right, the bill was by the CP as an organization, right, and built up the struggle with Mexican workers, the struggle against the Sleepy Lagoon. The trial of the Sleepy Lagoon in Los Angeles was led by who? Revolutionary communists, right, who were struggling with the oppressed and who had that wonderful reputation amongst the oppressed, amongst those I come in contact with, who led the struggle against discrimination in this country and the struggle for international solidarity. So at one time we had a very good relationship between class-conscious trade union leaders, right, militant, uncompromising labor leaders, right, and the class to which they were privileged to serve. Now let's examine more recent developments. I think we must be rather foolish if we don't understand that the latest development has been moved from promise to disappointment. Promise to disappointment. Many of us struggled in the 90s to change positions of labor. But we didn't change the commitment capacity of struggle of labor. So we changed our position. We felt good. Oh, the labor is now against employer sanctions. Hey, wonderful resolution. And then what happened? Although we in the Bay Area led that struggle, we relinquished leadership. Not even without a struggle, because now it's within the hands of labor. All right? And what happened? The disappointment was because we moved and shifted the struggle for broad rights and equal rights from the streets to the legislation, and then had no role whatsoever for the affected workers, migrants, class, and oppressed people. We had no role except to find out what was happening in Washington and how many of those fools we were trying to convince, right? And then only to see at the end of the process in 2004 what we always knew: they're a bunch of racist defenders of the status quo, and they will not make change on their own. It must be forced on them.